1/10 scale and cheap, two words we very rarely hear in the same sentence. Well, that's about to change because here we have a cheap 1/10 scale RC car. It's the new fully licensed WPL Suzuki Jimny. So this is a first for WPL. They've never released a 1/10 scale RC car before. And just because it's a bit bigger doesn't mean it's more expensive. You can actually pick these up for around £60 or $75, which for a 1/10 scale RC car is an absolute steal. So we know it's cheap, but is it actually going to be any good? Now, I've actually enjoyed WPL products in the past. Most of their products are really good and they're an affordable way to get people into the hobby. But then some of their products, well, they're total rubbish. And this was one of them. This thing was absolutely horrific. Now, I actually had some issues with the tracks on this. They kept falling off. Every single time you went over the smallest rock, it just wasn't usable. I know some people did some mods and upgrades, and they did become fairly usable. So is this going to turn out the same way, or is it actually going to be worth the money? And once again, £60 or $75 is insanely cheap for a 1/10 scale RC car. Now, when you get this out the box, you will have to fit some of the exterior components like the wing mirrors, the windscreen wipers, and the door handles. You will also have to apply some of the decals, but it's a very easy process and you should be up and running in no time. And I think that's probably the most important one. That is the Suzuki badge, because once again, this thing is fully licensed. And to be a fully licensed RC car at that price, again, that is pretty remarkable. Also in the box, we have a USB charger and the usual style WPL transmitter, which does have a steering dual rate and a throttle dual rate function. Battery wise, this thing comes with a 600 mAh 2S lithium ion. Hopefully that gives us decent runtime. We also get a very basic black and white manual in the box. Now, you may be looking at this and thinking, hang on a minute, that actually looks really small. There's no way that can be 1/10 scale. And looking at it sitting there like that, it does look really small. But it turns out this is a true 1/10 scale vehicle. And to prove this, take a look at this piece of footage from one of my fellow RC YouTubers.
So the dimensions of the JA11 Suzuki Jimny that this is a copy of are 3,295mm long and 1,395mm wide. Now at 1/10 scale, that means it should be 329.5mm long and 139.5mm wide, and it's pretty much spot on. So yes, it's definitely 1/10 scale.
Okay, so the numbers don't lie, it is true to scale, but comparing this to some of the other cars that I own, I would actually say it looks closer to a 1/12 scale vehicle. So we're going to take a closer look at the chassis features in a moment, but first let's talk about the body on this, because we do get a fantastic hard body. This feels really nice. I love how much effort they've gone to make this thing look as realistic as possible. So we have a hard plastic front bumper, the same on the rear. Now this is a cool little addition as well, but there is no spare in there, so just beware of that. And looking inside, I can also see a full interior. So let's talk about some of the chassis features then. Now this thing does have plastic drive shafts, plastic axles, we've got leaf spring suspension front and rear. Now the transmission on this is really cool because it does feature counter rotating drive shafts, which is to help eliminate torque twist. Down there we have an axle mounted steering servo. Now there's not a lot of metal components on this, but that is to be expected because this thing is super cheap. Although it does feel like the chassis rails are made out of metal. The tyres feel surprisingly soft, and at the back we have our battery tray, and this is one of the things I don't like about this already. It's incredibly fiddly, and it's in such an awkward place to try and get the battery in and out. Now once you do manage to get it open, it is a fairly large battery tray. So I've just switched this on to show you the LED lights. Just take a look at these, they do look really cool. And WPL vehicles, they always seem to have this yellowish tint, and I think it does add to the scale realism. Oh no, the weather's starting to turn again. Now I'll show you what I mean about the counter rotating drive shafts. If I hit the throttle slightly, oh, that doesn't look good. I'm not sure what's going on there, but that doesn't look right. Now, I'm not sure what's going on the front end there. It seems to be shaking around a little bit. It's kind of like something's binding. But look, the weather's starting to get bad again. I want to get this video done, so let's see how it performs. And that's something I can look at later. So let's go for a little test drive then, before the rain does come down even more. Now, this thing does have a very noisy transmission. I don't know if you can hear it, but it is quite noisy. But that doesn't really matter because it still seems to perform really well. I haven't had much luck with the weather this month. Every time I try to get out to do videos, it's always raining or super windy. Now, once again, when we consider the price of this little truck, I don't think it's too bad. Of course, it's not going to be perfect because once again, it is a WPL and they are rough around the edges, but people seem to love them and they love upgrading them and doing modifications. Let's see if we can get up the dirt here. Yep, easy, no troubles whatsoever. And of course, this is a trail truck. This isn't really a crawler. If you want to go over rocks and stuff, you need to buy a dedicated rock crawler. This is for all your favourite trails. Now, it definitely feels like something's going on the front end, so I am going to have to investigate and see what's going on because it doesn't quite feel right. But I mean, £60, $75 for what it is, it's really not a bad little car. And it looks pretty cool too. So I'll show you the two different throttle rates. So that is the low speed setting, not too bad. Let's switch over to high speed. That's definitely made it a little bit quicker. It's still not going to be winning any races. Now, I really don't want to be too negative because it is a very cheap little truck, but it feels like there's also something going on the rear. Now, just take a look at it and tell me if you can see what's wrong. And did you notice there is an issue with the suspension on the rear? Now, having that big heavy lithium-ion battery right at the back seems to be weighing it down a little bit, and the leaf spring suspension just isn't doing a good enough job. I think there's just a little bit too much weight going on at the back. Maybe a little bit of quality control WPL, and you would have noticed that that's an issue. So there we go then, guys. That was the new WPL Suzuki Jimny. Just like all the WPLs, it is a little bit rough around the edges, but at the current price of £60 or $75, I still think it's a steal. And I'm pretty sure they're going to release an upgrade for the suspension, or if they don't, I'm sure there's going to be some kind of fix. Maybe you can put the battery elsewhere and get some of the weight off the rear. That might actually solve the problem. So who is this little car for then? Well, I think this is going to be for the scale fans, because I wouldn't recommend this for someone getting into the hobby. As we've mentioned, it does have some issues, and I don't think it's fun enough for a beginner. I would say if you're looking at something in this sort of price range and you're just starting out in the hobby, have a look at something like the High Boxing 16889 or the FTX Tracer. Those little trucks are going to be much faster. They're also going to be more durable, and with some oil shocks, they're going to perform really well. Whereas this, as you see, didn't really perform as expected. Now, even though this thing does have its flaws, it's still a good move in the right direction for WPL, and hopefully we see larger models in the future. And I do love the fact that they're trying to keep prices low while still trying to give us a quality product. But I don't know about you guys, I'd rather spend a little bit more and actually get a better product. But that's just me, you may disagree. Now, if you want to see more from WPL on my channel, click one of these videos now.